Good morning, everybody. I can see our participant number kind of ticking up, so I'm going to give it just a few seconds before we start to make sure that everybody is logged on and ready to go. So hold tight for just a second. Okay. Well, we are incredibly excited to be hosting and bringing to you this webinar this morning. So thank you for joining us. Today's topic, if you didn't know, is global real estate and the effects of COVID-19. We obviously have been feeling that impact here in Ohio. We know that's happening around the world. And so we're excited to kind of give you a glimpse into what some of our friends and partners around the globe have been experiencing as well. This presentation is brought to you jointly by the Global Business Alliance Committee here at Ohio Realtors and the Commercial Committee. There you go. You see the chair and vice chair. We've actually been working a lot together this year, which has been wonderful. So much of the work that Global focuses on intersects with the work that our commercial practitioners are doing. And so we are really happy today to bring you this session. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have a very packed presentation for you today, a lot of wonderful content. We're going to start with Joe and Lisa from NAR, and then we're going to move into a panel with 3 international speakers from the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Joe. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, perfect. First of all, thank you, Ohio Realtors, for allowing both Lisa and myself to present to you today. This is something we always love doing, and it really gives us a chance to kind of highlight what we're doing, as well as highlight the opportunities that are available to you through the efforts of NAR and our state and local associations. So what I want to do is we have about an hour and a half. I don't think we're going to take that whole time unless we have a lot of questions, and trust me, questions are encouraged. So if you have anything, please let us know. But what I want to do is kind of start off with quick introductions of Lisa and myself, and then we'll go to what NAR Global is, what we're trying to accomplish, and what kind of the overall strategy is. And then Lisa's going to kind of take us into what the international investment landscape of Ohio looks like. And then lastly, we have a really exciting panel discussion with 3 great leaders from Germany, Japan, and UK, who I don't want to take any of Lisa's thunder away, but are 3 of the 5 biggest investors in the state of Ohio. So jumping right in. Again, my name is Joe Schneider. I'm the Director of Global Strategy and Alliances for the National Association of Realtors. I've been with NAR for about 5 years now. And this is, I can quite honestly say, the best job I've ever had. I get on a daily basis, get to interact with real estate professionals from around the world, learn the best practices of the things that are going on in their market, both the successes that they're having, the challenges that they're having, and I get to come kind of help implement some of those best practices here in the US. On top of that, before I kind of became NAR, I worked in tech for a couple of years, and I actually got my real estate start. I was a realtor in the Bay Area for about 4 years. And I actually kind of had a strange little foray into the business. I worked for a small kind of consulting company. And what we did is we worked with incentivized development with cities and municipalities throughout Northern California. So we would work with developers and help negotiate tax deals in exchange for projects that the city the city needed at that time. And then it turns out a lot of that in the Bay Area, as you can imagine, was affordable housing initiatives. So what I would do is help negotiate those up front, wait for the development to be built, and then, being a government project, as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that goes on behind the scenes. So a lot of realtors didn't really know how to kind of jump on those opportunities. So got my license and would list those on the back end. So I had a nice little foray into the business with that. And like I said, real estate is in my blood. My family was in the industry before, and just in love with this business, every single aspect of it. So that's a little bit about me. Lisa, do you want to kind of go into your background a little bit?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I'm Lisa Calarco. I'm the manager of global programs and outreach for NAR's engagement team. I have been in this position for 4 years now, just over 4 years maybe. Prior to this, I've spent 14 years in association management. So unlike Joe, I've spent most of my association working for the most of my career working for the National Association of Realtors, from education to designations in all kinds of forms. And I will say that this is my favorite job. I know we sound corny and canned, but that's true. The last 4 years I've spent working with the association staff around the United States in developing global programming. I'm really taking the opportunity to work hand in hand with the state and local associations to figure out the needs that they have and opportunities that they can create. Has really been an awesome ride for me so far. So I am here to talk to you today. Like Joe said, thanks so much for inviting us, and I look forward to this presentation.
Perfect. So let's jump right in. So let's talk a little bit about what NAR Global is doing, what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to bring to you at the state and local associations. First and foremost, we have three kind of evergreen goals of what NAR Global really stands for. First and foremost is we are trying to bring international investment opportunities into our members' hands. So every year we get around $250 billion of international investment coming into the US. And that accounts for about 10% of the local market. So really what we're doing is, and in the next slide I'll kind of explain how we do it, but something we started to do in the last couple of years is focus not only on the inbound, but the outbound as well. It's not something we've always kind of worked on as NAR Global, but we realized that investment is leaving the US and going to other countries as well. So we're helping to try to help bridge that maybe knowledge gap or connection gap by working with our partners around the world. The second main goal that we have is to raise the level of professionalism in the real estate field throughout the world. So NAR is hands down the world leader in education provided to its members. So what we're trying to do, and of course, what's relevant in the US and the education that we take here is not going to perfectly apply to an international market. So what we do is we take all of our real estate designations and certifications and all education material that we have, broaden it a little bit, and then help deliver it to an international market. And the reason behind that is because if we're going to be dealing and working with each other for these investment opportunities back and forth, we really want to be talking about the same things, using the same vocabulary, being trained in the same kind of core principles. So that's something that we think is a really important aspect. And globally right now we have about 25,000 designees of either CIPS, ABR, SRS. So the same things you guys are taking here in the US, our international members are really taking advantage of that too, to learn what we're going through here in the US. And then the third goal, which is sometimes a little more altruistic goal, but for the sake of the first goal of helping kind of create that real estate investment, is to really help and develop and strengthen real estate markets around the world. So this might be anything from working with governments to set up licensing standards. This might be help with setting up MLSs, basic advocacy work, what we do here in the US, but again, kind of stripped down a little bit, broadened, and then brought to our partners so they can start implementing in their market. Now, the folks that we have on this call here with Caroline, Arissa, and Mark from the UK, Germany, and Japan, they are very, very advanced markets in every sense of the word. So this is not something that we focus on with them. Our main priorities with these markets are really the goal number 1 and goal number 2. So really, it kind of runs the gamut of what we're trying to do. And so I mentioned of how we accomplish these goals. So NAR currently has 105 partner associations in 85 countries around the world. So with that, what we're trying to do is, again, those 3 goals are always at the top of mind for us. So we work with these partner associations to help facilitate and develop those investment opportunities for our members. And so once it's in the US, we have NAR members that are really the catalyst for pushing this. We call them global ambassadors. And what they do is they work with our cooperating associations on the day-to-day to help keep those relationships alive, keep those relationships vibrant, and really make sure that the lines of communication are consistently open. So that's kind of the international global point of view. From the domestic point of view, what we do to help facilitate in that investment is you guys, the state global business councils, state and local global business councils. We have 130 of those councils in 28 states across the country. You guys, the Ohio Association of Realtors, you are the ambassador associations to Finland, I believe. And with what you guys, that kind of helps kind of create the loop of tying the associations to our cooperating associations abroad to help focus on those 3 goals. And then I mentioned that we also have a international realtor program. So these are members outside of the US that are really focused on that international investment and really focused on the education parameters of what we're offering outside of the US. And so much so that they want to become members of NAR to really take full advantage of those offerings that we deliver to our international partners. So that's kind of what we do internationally and domestically from a global perspective. And we could talk a little bit more about it when we go on the panel discussion. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to kind of talk about the international outlook in Ohio and what the investment opportunities are. So Lisa, go ahead.
All right, Joe, thank you very much. Like Joe just went over, he just went over the what and the how, what NAR Global is and how we structure ourselves and our goals. I'm going to talk a little bit about the why. I think it's important. I think a lot of members often ask why. Why does the National Association of Realtors care so much about foreign direct investment? When I think why, I think show me the data, show me the research. And so, oops. Either it's delayed or whatever, but we're going to try and go back a slide. Okay, Joe, are you moving this?
I'm not.
All right, well, I cannot get it to go back. Okay. Got it. Okay, sorry everybody. So the why. Every year since 2009, NAR has conducted a large international report. It's been called multiple things, but it's typically the international home buying activity in the United States. And right now I'm going to talk about the residential side, and there is a commercial side we will get to as well. As Carrie mentioned, a lot of this is residential and commercial. They work hand in hand when it comes to the global space, which is a really cool and unique function of global, is that we don't talk about just homes or just businesses, we just talk about real estate. And in 2019, last year end, this survey is in the field every March. So March 2018 to March 2019, the data showed us that there was $77.9 billion that came in on the residential side of real estate alone that was purchased by foreign buyers. There's 60% of that was purchased by the resident foreign buyer. Now, what's a resident foreign buyer? There are 2 types of buyers that we look at when we do this report every year. There's the resident foreign buyer, which is what it sounds like, a resident of the United States, new. So green card holder, visa holder, student visa holder, any kind of new American. 60% in 2019 were the resident foreign buyer. And so that means 40% were the non-resident foreign buyer. And and a non-resident foreign buyer, again, exactly what it sounds like, somebody who does not reside or hold citizenship status in the United States. Typically those are foreign, perhaps second home buyers. A lot of those do come under, interestingly enough, are the Canadians, our good friends to the north, purchase a lot of property down in like Florida and Arizona. And as long as they're not here for longer than 6 months, they don't have to pay taxes, and they can not be a resident in the United States in order to purchase and hold property. So a lot of those come on the Canadian side. And of course, the other side of that is the pure investment buyer, somebody looking to maybe buy a vacation home from the UK on the Cape, Cape Cod on the East Coast, things like that. Those are the two types of foreign buyers we look at for this survey. So in 2019, let's call it $78 billion came in from that segment of the real estate alone. 47% of those purchased primary residence. And so the interesting trend we started to see was it was moving away from those non-resident foreign buyers, investors purchasing in the United States when our dollar was weak, when the investment was good, for the non-US residents to purchase real estate in the United States. And it's moving more towards the resident foreign buyer. So those looking in your community to purchase a home, a single family home to live in, to establish a community, to establish residence in. And so this is why NAR pays attention to this segment. As Joe said, it represents about 10% of the overall real estate market, and it's not an insignificant amount of investment to ignore and pay attention to. It should be part of your toolbox, and we're here to provide the resources, research, and tools for you to help capture and understand that share of the market. So let's get it to move. But I will say in 2019, while my slides decide if they want to move or not, we did see a decline. So there was in 2018, we saw $121 billion. And in 2017, we saw $153 billion of international real estate purchased by foreign buyers. So let's be honest, there was a decline. But so why was there a decline? Well, I think all of you can agree that the low inventory, no matter who's buying, is going to cause a decline in purchasing. Existing homes in April 2019, there was about a 4.5 month supply of homes on the market. And, typically a healthy level is a 6-month supply. So no matter how much money you had, you couldn't find inventory to purchase. So that affected the decline. Another impact was the strong US dollar. Finally, I think some of us would agree the dollar started to strengthen in late 2018, early 2019. And obviously, the stronger the dollar, the more expensive our home prices become in comparison to other currencies. And so that, wasn't as much of a deal. There wasn't a lot of bang for the buck, if you will, when it came to purchasing if you were from another country. And then, of course, there was the global slowdown. From 2016 to 2019, economies started to slow down their growth, but as opposed to the years leading up to 2016, where there was perceived, boom in other countries. And there's nothing you can do about that. A global economic slowdown just makes people a little less willing to be risk averse with their money. And so that is why the decline, but it's not a decline. The $78 billion is more on par with what we're used to seeing on the foreign investment side of the real estate market. The numbers we saw in 2017 at $153 billion blew our minds. And it was a lot of that was there were no restrictions on the money coming out of Asia and China specifically. There was a big run on the US real estate markets because in spite of everything going on in the world, the US real estate market is still the safest and smartest investment you can make with your money. And a lot of savvy investors know that, and they will purchase it when it's to be purchased and when it's to be had. I think this is a little fun experiment I do next is I'm going to ask you, if anybody wants to take a stab at it, what is the most expensive in the chat box, I think, if that's okay. If you're paying attention, this is just a little brain break. Where in the world, what city do you believe is the most expensive home to be purchased? I will give you 8 seconds to throw up a thought into that chat box. All right, these are fun. Okay. This is why I do this. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So you want to know the answer? I'm going to give it to you. The most expensive place in the world, city center. So these are cities. These are, so think major metro cities. I know the answer, even though it won't come up. The answer is London in UK. I know, I think we have Mark on here, but in London, it is the most expensive place in the world to purchase a home. It is $29,680 per square meter to own a home in city center of London. So everybody get out your conversion calculators. 120 square meters of residence in London is approximately 1,291 square feet. So for those of us in the US, square feet would cost you $3.56 million to purchase that in city center London. I know myself, I would have probably answered San Francisco, where Joe's from, the Bay Area there, because that's all we hear about is how insanely expensive those prices are, right? No, God, I could never live in San Francisco. I'm from, Chicago. I could never move to San Francisco. It's insane out there. I think this perspective just helps put in why people are so eager to purchase real estate in the United States, how in comparison it is affordable. When you talk about, I see people are saying, New York. I saw some of you answered New York. You're not wrong. New York comes in at number 3, but here's where it comes in. So look at your screen, you can see that cost there. New York, in comparison to London, is $17,190 per square meter. So it's less than half. But that translates, for that same 1,291 square feet of living space, translates to $2.06 million. So right off the top, you've saved yourself $1.5 million. And then from 3 to forever come in all those other cities: Singapore, Rome, Paris, Berlin, Tokyo, Moscow. They are all in there until the next US city that pops on that list comes in at number 30. So that's a lot of cities you can live in that are a lot more expensive than anywhere here in the United States. And at 30, you're looking at San Jose, which comes in at $876,000. San Francisco, $672,000. And then Anaheim. So then, yeah, you go to the West Coast and it gets a little less affordable. But if I took $3.56 million to live in that same space in New York, or own, I should say, own, even if you're just looking to invest, in the UK, I could take that same amount of living space and get it for under $900,000 if I went to the San Jose area in California. I always think that's a good perspective to step back and kind of look at what the US, because it seems sometimes unattainable and unaffordable to those of us that don't look outside our market. And so to be able to take the long view, to step back and look around the world and what is happening around the world, and why invest in the United States and things like that, this is just a little fun exercise, I think really gives us some perspective. So what are the opportunities that you can achieve? So these are strange times. COVID crisis that's going on, the economic collapses around the world, but there's always opportunity. And I think it's phenomenal to take a step back, and it's advantageous for all of us who maybe are finding ourselves with a little bit more time on our hands, maybe not a lot, but a little bit more. So when I originally wrote these slides and I took a look at opportunity, I was trying to take a look at what since we had such a decline from 121 billion to 78 billion, people kind of were like, oh man, what does that mean? Again, I just laugh, like that's billions of dollars. But Now that we're in a global economic crisis at this point with COVID and the world changing and everything like that, these opportunities still uniquely fit into those scenarios. So I didn't modify them. They hold true no matter what we're going through. You can look at your opportunities in your sellers. So if you had foreign buyers who purchased here in your local markets, if you helped them get settled, if you were already transacting international real estate, clients in Ohio and you helped them get settled, perhaps they purchased back in 2012, 2011, when that US dollar was weak and they were coming in from another country who they were getting a lot of bang for their buck. I keep going back to that. It's like I'm from 1930. So reach out to those buyers that you help settled. Is there an opportunity for the sellers? Do you have a network? If you don't have a network in which you can start making those connections, that's what NAR Global is. That's everything Joe went over. We have built those connections for you. We're here to help for you to find those connections. I'm sure most of you are on social media, and if you are paying attention to anything, I am seeing so many little side webinars by groups and networking opportunities and things like that, that really you could be taking advantage of now. Do you know, Joe mentioned the outbound. So the US dollar is strong. And so if I'm a US resident, once things settle down, then maybe I want to invest in another country. Maybe I want to buy a second home in Mexico or in the UK or places like that. Do you, as a US realtor, have that connection? Can you pass that referral off to somebody else to handle in those foreign countries? How can you create that opportunity for yourself? The knowledge that you have, less inventory, there's less inventory, which could equal less buyers. So now is the time to make sure you get involved, make sure you're knowledgeable, to make sure you're paying attention to what's happening around the world, to position yourself as the expert, because I want to turn to an expert, somebody who's taken the time to really understand the markets and understand how to help me, how to help with that network and all of that. And I don't have to tell realtors this. Realtors are the most involved people I know in any community, but it's so important to be involved, even from an association perspective. How are you positioning your association and you yourself as a member, getting involved in your local community, and not just generally speaking, but if you want to focus on what's coming, the opportunities that are coming into your local market. Remember how I said in the very beginning, 60% of foreign buyers were recent immigrants. They were the new resident foreign buyers. They're in your community and they want to get involved. And are you connecting to that? Are you as an association connecting to that? Have you found those organizations that support those communities? They're turning into home buyers. They're purchasing into your community. There's no better way to strengthen a community than to own a home in that community. And are you, as a member, reaching out and saying, I have the expertise to help you. I've taken education. I've educated myself. I know how to handle a foreign transaction, because it's still a foreign transaction, because it's the first time they're purchasing real estate in the United States. And chances are maybe their money's coming from their home country, or things like that, or they're trying to establish a social security number as a new US citizen, things like that. It's a different transaction than we normally would. And so are you involved in those communities? There's like welcome groups. I know there's a group in, I believe, in Dayton called like Welcome Dayton that focuses on the immigrant communities that are coming in. First time homebuyer seminars that are catered to non-US or recent US citizens. It's a different transaction. And so those are new opportunities for you to create when you're looking to get a little bit share of this market. All right. Remember, I told you there was commercial data as well. Of course there is. We have, and I'll post in the chat or Q&A when I'm done, the link to all of this research. It's simple. It's nar.realtor/research. You go there, and as an NAR member, you have access to all of our research, which includes these international reports. 2019, we've been looking at the commercial international transactions for about 2 or 3 years now. 99.7, so let's call it $100 billion came in on the commercial side of the foreign investment into the United States. 52% of them were all cash purchases. and 67% of buyers and 75% of sellers lived abroad. So a lot of these are investment buyers. And so the full reports on the residential side that I talked about earlier and the commercial side, they go into hyper detail, and I'm not going to spend time going on to that, but if you're interested in those reports, please go download them for yourself and dive into them as well. So the one thing to note with the commercial data is that about 95 billion of it was reported by Real Capital Analytics, and those are transactions that are 2.5 million or above. The NAR data is looking at 2.5 million and below. And we look at that and we saw that at 2.5 million per transaction and below came in at $4.8 billion. So we take our data and we take our Real Capital Analytics data, and that's where we come up with this number. You can go there and look at that. And then also at nar.realtor/research, there are state-by-state reports. So you can go there and download a report on Ohio and see what the international business picture looks like in Ohio. These reports are updated every 2 to 3 years, and right now that we're in a census year, the refresh on these is going to be very interesting, and it's going to paint a very interesting picture on what is happening in Ohio. I'm going to give you really quick and dirty numbers on what is happening in Ohio from the foreign side of the fence. And you have about 37,000 international students that attend Ohio institutions of higher learning in 2019. If you go to iie.org, you can download that report. It's a one-pager for every state in the US. But 37,000 international students attend universities, and their economic impact will blow your mind. They have it at the top of the report there. I'm talking billions of dollars are brought into your state by those foreign students. 4.5% of the residents residing in Ohio are foreign born. So that's just for your knowledge, just a little, it's IIE Institute, International Institute Education.org. IIE.org is where you can find the Ohio report. Sorry, I just saw a question pop in. 4.5% of your residents are foreign born. And in the state of Ohio alone, you have over 1,000 international establishments that have brought their operations to your state, which represents over 45 countries. So Ohio is, people are like, I don't have any foreigners or foreign investment or whatever. Ohio is very, very prolific when it comes to international establishments in your state. And here is why. Your foreign direct investment, so that's foreign money coming into your state, has created 400 new international projects since 2013. That means it's created over 270,000 new jobs for Ohioans that were created directly as a result of that foreign direct investment, which makes Ohio the seventh largest international, gives Ohio the seventh largest international employment rate in the country. And you'll see on my left, I don't know what you're looking at, maybe it's your right, wherever the pie chart is, you'll see where those sources are coming from. And this data is coming from you guys. It's coming from Jobs Ohio, which is your public-private economic development arm in the state of Ohio. And this is not NAR's data, this is their data, this is your data. And it, as you can see, this shows you where that foreign direct investment is coming from. And like Joe said, he gave a spoiler alert, France, UK, Canada, Germany, and Japan. And today we're very lucky in about 5 minutes to be joined by representatives from the UK, Germany, and Japan. And so that wasn't by accident. We did know what your investment levels look like. And so we tagged some of our experts from those areas to talk to you about it. This is just a quote. I am not going to read it to you. The point I put this up here for is that the economic development when it comes to state and local associations and the importance of understanding what your state is doing as far as it comes to economic development and what you're bringing into your local economy. If you as a state association or local association in your local markets are not paying attention to what your public or public-private arms are doing as far as economic development is concerned, you're missing an opportunity, especially in Ohio, when you've got over 1,000 foreign firms established within your state. Why did they pick Ohio? Why didn't they pick Indiana? No snarky comments, but why didn't they pick Kentucky? Why did they decide to move from Japan, from Germany into Ohio? What is Ohio offering that the other states can't? And do you know that? Can you add those talking points to your presentations when you're working with foreign buyers? Why would I move to Ohio and not Indiana? I keep going, well, I'm trying to do borders, because I don't know if you guys have seen the meme of like people who try to fill out the map of the United States, and it's just hysterical where they put our states. To them, to most foreign investors, they're probably not thinking, I want to move to Dayton, Ohio. They're thinking, I want to move to the United States. And if somebody says, well, you should move to Dayton, Ohio, give them a blank map and see where they put Dayton, Ohio. Everybody knows, I shouldn't even say everybody. I think Florida gives away by its shape. The rest of us in the middle, especially us Midwesterners, who all their shapes blur together, it doesn't really matter. But your economic development groups really do awesome jobs on research and why it matters and why you would make that decision to move here, and partnering with them, creating a symbiotic relationship that says, hey, I know Governor DeWine is going to go over to Japan on a trade mission, and his goal is to drive business back to Ohio. Do you have an in? Do you have a way to say, we are the real estate industry, and we want to support all the economic development we can in our state. If you're going to move a Fuyao from Japan to Ohio, you're going to need at least 3,000 rooftops, because if you want that factory to employ people, where are we going to put those people? We, as the real estate industry, have that data. How can we work hand in hand with you? How can we create a partnership that says, absolutely, we all want to grow this community, but what does the infrastructure look like, and how can we make this work as a partnership together? And that, I think there's this quote, and again, like I said, I'm not going to read to you, but this came off of Jobs Ohio. Again, this is their quote from one of the companies from the UK that moved their operations, and it discusses like why would they move into Ohio, and what does that mean? They're building, businesses are moving in, businesses drive rooftops, and that, again, like I said in the beginning, is why it's really unique to work in this space, because it's not just homes and it's not just businesses. They work symbiotically together, and to be able to create that relationship for yourselves and for your association is key to your success. So I think you have an amazing leadership at your state level association. They understand this wholeheartedly, and they will work on your behalf to make sure that the economic drivers are there for your members, for their members, and for you. I know this, people are looking for information about COVID-19 and how we're handling this crisis, but the other day I came across a really interesting quote on a podcast, and it stuck with me. We don't have the answers. The quote was, "We are the experiment that will create the data." And so, and somebody on that podcast just said it in passing, and it kind of stuck with me. We don't know. We're all just trying to figure this out together day by day. So if you take the opportunity, if you continue to create the relationships, in a year, in 1 or 2 years, we'll have the data we can look back on and say, this is how we handled that. And I think by you joining us today on this webinar, and you're about to hear from some great partners that NAR has, and the opportunities that they have and that they are seeing in their markets, and how we can work together, I think we can only create a stronger global economy if we continue to work together. So at that, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to give it back to Joe. And if you have questions or anything like that, chat box, and we'll be in touch with Carrie and Mike and your whole leadership team. So thank you very much.
Great information, Lisa. Thank you so much. So I want to switch gears here a little bit, and I want to talk about the thing that everybody's talking about. Every channel, anything you go to right now is revolving around COVID-19, and for good reason. So what we want to do is, as we've talked about, we have 3 of our esteemed colleagues and leaders from the UK, Germany, and Japan on the call here. And what I want to do is, before we kind of get into the questions, I want to kick it over to them to give kind of a brief bio, a little bit about their association, and things like that. So Arissa, why don't we start with you?
Hi, my name is Arisa Honma. I'm from Tokyo, Japan, and I am an administrative manager and researcher at Japan America Real Estate Coalition Office. And I am also honored to serve as one of the International Board of Directors at NAR this year. For people who've never heard of Jericho, we are an organization where we conduct research and information exchange on international real estate through mutual cooperation with NAR. I appreciate the opportunity for me to be here today, and I look forward to exchanging the information with you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Arissa. All right, why don't we move on to Carolyn from Germany. Carolyn?
Good morning to Ohio. Good afternoon from Berlin. I'm very pleased about the invitation to join your session today to tell you something about the German market. I'm the CEO of the IBD, the Realtors Association in Germany. And we represent more than 6,000 realtors in Germany. This may not seem much to you, but you must understand that there are only around about 12,000 realtor firms in Germany. So every second realtor company is member of the IBD, and the IBD members are responsible for over 400,000 transactions worth almost 100 billion euros.
Wow. That's a pretty big market share. Great, thank you, Carolyn. Mark, let's move on to you, the CEO of Property Mark in the United Kingdom.
Yep, hello. Well, NEA Property Mark in the UK is the equivalent of NAR. We've got about 17,500 members, which represents about 83% of realtors within the UK. Our members will handle the vast number of transactions on sales. We also operate in the commercial market and the auctioneering market. We work very closely with government, and certainly over the last 6 or 7 weeks, that's been almost daily contact to ensure that there's government support out there for our industry and our sectors. And I think we've been very successful in getting that support. But we are in a different normal now. We won't go back to what was before, and I think our members will find it more difficult to come out of lockdown. And our sector was partially released last Wednesday as to how they will come out and in what volume, and whether or not the deals that were struck before the lockdown, which amount to about 82 billion pounds, not dollars, pounds, come through.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's start talking about how COVID is specifically impacting your markets and what you're seeing as far as trends. Carolyn, do you want to start and kick that off?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. But before I start, I want to apologize to you. And my English is not as good as I would like. So I need some papers. I want to come back to Lisa and invite you to invest in Berlin. Here in Berlin, you can get an apartment for 2,500 euros per square meter. So if you don't want to invest in London, come to Berlin. It's a beautiful, vivid city. So back to your question, Joe. In Germany, brokers are restricted in their ability to work. At the beginning of the Corona crisis, and the restrictions on contacts. The existing orders have been processed and completed, but it's difficult to acquire new business. There's great uncertainty among clients about what is allowed, what is possible, what is recommendable. Is it the right time to buy a house despite the recession, which everybody is expecting to occur? Is it even possible to just move? How does financing work in these times of crisis? And the sellers might wonder, will I get enough interested parties if I put my house on the market now? Will I get a good price? Should I wait? These are the questions that make it difficult for brokers to acquire new orders. These concerns are the reason the vast majority of German realtors have reported a drop in demand, and the acquisition of property has become more difficult. On the other hand, realtors were allowed to reopen their trades 3 weeks ago, subject to the rule of distance and hygiene, of course. They are also allowed to conduct viewings, also under strict rules. These rules are the reason why most realtors now conduct inspections online. In this way, interested parties can get an idea, you know it, whether the apartment or house is suitable for them without any advance contact with the residents. Only once interest is confirmed does the estate agent organize an on-site inspection on the building. This saves time for all involved parties. Virtual viewings is likely to become increasingly popular even after the corona crisis is over. Certification by a notary is still possible, but much more difficult because of the social distancing rules. It is especially difficult if a person from an at-risk group is involved. We therefore call for the legal introduction of digitalized certification. Overall, the IVD is requesting that digitalization be stepped up in the approval and planning processes. Even though we expect interest rates to remain very low, we are observing that financing will become more difficult. The banks are demanding a higher equity ratio, and it takes much longer to process a loan application because the banks are overloaded with loans for government aid. But what we also know is that the demand for residential real estate is high, even during this period. The real estate portals are registering extremely high interest in house and apartment offers. This may also be due to the fact that people in home office have more time to search for a new home during the corona lockdown. We recommend our members use this time to get in touch with potential customers and prepare for the time after corona.
Thank you, Carolyn. That was a great recap. We're seeing a lot of those same things here in the US, and of course we vary a little bit state by state, but yeah, it's a tough situation all around. So let's kick it over to Mark. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in the UK market?
Well, I think very similar to Carolyn in terms of we only came out of lockdown last week. I would echo the view that the consumer is still very, very keen to buy and rent property. Now, whether that will actually materialize, but certainly during lockdown, our members were being besieged by people wanting to view property. We couldn't show no property could be shown for 7 weeks. No property could be listed for 7 weeks. We know that economically we're on shifting sands, but as Carolyn said, interest rates are still low. There is concern as to how lenders will view property in terms of risk. They did at one point reduce the loan to value right down to 65%, whereas normally we'd be at 85 to 90%. as a maximum, but first-time buyers still seem to be keen. We're not seeing a wholesale exit from the market. I think it is early days. We've got some areas of the country where sellers are not keen to welcome strangers into their home, regardless of the fact whether they're doing social distancing, whether they're wearing PPE. They might be areas where there's been low infection, so they're reluctant to draw people from outside the area in. But generally, I think because the government has been very supportive in terms of staff, most of our members furloughed, which is a term where you lay your staff off, but the government pays 80% of their wages, and it's now until July. A lot of them have taken their staff offline, so they've got to come back. And I think also in terms of property, people's priorities may change in terms of, do they want to live in an urban environment anymore? Cheek by jowl to neighbours? Do they want to move into more rural area? I think the fact that they've been distanced for so long from their family means they might want to move back closer to home. You know, we have this ridiculous situation at the moment that you can't see your grandparents, but you can see your realtor. So we have to fight that in terms of publicity, but you know, shelter is the prime hierarchical need. The government understands that a number of other industries revolve around property. So for economics, it's the right thing to do, but we're being careful.
Great, thank you for sharing. Arissa, same question. What is the impact of COVID on the Japanese market?
So in Japan, we have been under the state of emergency for over a month now, but hard lockdown cannot be legally enforced in Japan. So most measures and requests and instructions to stay home and to close stores and business that are non-essential. That being said, real estate agents and companies in Japan needs to make kind of like voluntary judgment. And I see major real estate companies are self-restrained, while small and medium-sized companies are still open and working. We still see new homes and existing homes, rental listing going on market, but some of the new condo sales have been postponed. And also there is a decrease in the number of used condo sales. According to one of the largest portal sites in Japan, the average number of condos listed in Tokyo area is 20% less than the average of last year. So we do see some impact. And also another big impact would be decrease in the number of showings. One of the surveys shows 41% decrease in showings and customer visiting the office. So we do see some impact.
Okay, it's quite a big slowdown. So Arissa, why don't we stay with you? I want to shift a little bit to how the government is helping kind of curb the full impact of COVID-19. Here in the US, we had a record stimulus package at the national level. And then, you know, in the US, we have a little different governance system with state and local rights and things like that. But our government did an incredible job of stepping in and passing a large stimulus bill to really kind of curb the economic effects. Is there anything similar in Japan?
Yes, there are some economic programs available to people throughout Japan from the government. One of them would be they offered 100,000 yen payout, which is about like $900 to every individual in Japan. Also, the government is working on raising the upper limit to subsidies for companies to retain employees who are on paid leaves. They are trying to raise that from $77 to $140 per day. And also, as for the unemployment allowance, it's 50 to 80% of the previous salary, and the upper limit is $77 per day. Also, the government offers housing subsidies to those who are unemployed. And the government is also working on rent relief for restaurants and other business being forced to shut down due to coronavirus.
Interesting. So have the subsidies been distributed yet, or is it something that's still kind of in the works?
Some of them, they already have started the process of distributing. Some of them, they are still discussing how much and how to do that.
Okay, interesting. Mark, same question. What has the government done to kind of help curb the potential economic negative impacts?
Well, I've explained about the fact that they've subsidized staff. We also campaigned the fact that their offices were empty. They shouldn't have to pay local taxes. So they've been exempted from local taxes on their office properties for a year. They can apply for a grant, which is a gift, and they're coming through, and that's up to $15,000. They have also put into place nationally 2 forms of loan, one up to $75,000 and one unlimited, but based on a percentage of your turnover. So I have members that have this loan, anything from £75,000 up to £1 million. That is a 6-year loan, interest-free for the first year, and then interest only 2.5%. So the government has done a lot to shore it up. The problem is they're all on life support at the moment. In other words, all this help's there. When that starts to drift away, then the difficulties will start to appear, and we reckon the beginning of Q4 is going to be very critical in terms of cash flow for our members.
Interesting. That's a scary situation. Carolyn, same question. What has the German government done to step in and try to curb the economic impact?
After the outbreak of the pandemic, the German government passed a temporary law according to which residential tenants may not be determined if they cannot pay their rent. So far, only a few tenants have taken advantage of this law, but we expect more to do so over time. This will then shift the burden onto landlords who often need the rental income for their livelihood. We are therefore requesting a special housing payment so that tenants in need can continue to pay their rent. We have asked our members how the corona crisis affects their company or business operations, and we found out that 2/3 of real estate companies have considerable sales losses. The average so far is 52%. More than 1 in 6 stated that their company applied for reduced working hours. I'm not sure whether the reduced working hours compensation model is also available in the United States. Therefore, let me explain it briefly. It comes from unemployment insurance, and if an employer has to reduce regular working hours because of the corona crisis, unemployment insurance partially compensates for lost earnings. So job can be retained despite the current situation of the company, which would normally make layoffs necessary. Nearly 3% of IBD members reporting having to lay off employees, and 2% reported concerns about going bankrupt. That's the situation in Germany.
Do the IVD members, do they qualify for these unemployment programs and subsidies?
They are qualified for these programs as well, yes.
Great, great. So, for time consideration, I appreciate everything, but let's kind of move on to the $1 million question here is, do you think that this COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic will have long-term effects on your individual markets, or is this kind of a blip in the road? Carolyn, let's start with you.
Yes. The situation is really difficult, but we are positive thinking because we are convinced that the structural relationship between supply and demand in the pre-crisis period characterized by a housing shortage will remain in Germany. According to our current analysis, the development of rental and purchase prices cannot completely escape the negative effects of the corona pandemic, but price slumps are not to be expected, provided that the restrictions currently in force are gradually lifted by the end of the summer and economic life returns to normal to a large extent. You have to understand that in Germany, 80% of all residential units are owned by individuals. No other market in the world, we guess, is as diversified as the German real estate market. And this means that Germany gets through the real estate crisis better than other countries, maybe. Following the corona crisis, demand for residential space will continue to exceed supply in many places in Germany, especially in large cities. In the 80 major German cities, these are cities with more than 100,000 inhabitants, there is currently a shortage of around 1 million affordable apartments, 1 million. And this shortfall won't change in the medium term. The IVD expects demand to remain high, especially in the lower and middle price segments. By contrast, many tenants' households will postpone moving into larger and significantly more expensive apartments in 2020. Overall, fluctuation in the rental housing market will continue to fall. After the financial crisis in 2008-2009, 300,000 to 500,000 people from other European Union countries immigrated to Germany. Most of them came from Southern Europe. As a result, the demand for real estate, above all in cities with a broad labor market supply, rose to an additional 150,000 to 250,000 residential units per year. A similarly high level of immigration and additional demand for residential space can be expected after the corona crisis.
That's a positive sign. Good. So, perfect. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Arissa, why don't we go to you? Same question.
So I have the statistics with me right now from last month. And the research shows that in April 2020, the number of contracts for used condos in Tokyo area fell 52.6% year on year. And for existing homes, it fell 41.5% year on year, directly hitting the spring market. And as for the price, we see sharp drop in hotels and commercial real estate. And also it had impact on newly built single family homes due to the builders rushing to cash out. Mm-hmm. So in the long term, we expect high priced properties to be affected probably. And I think for the medium and low priced properties, the price could fall 5 to 10% depending on the price range. Another impact I can think of is it definitely changed our work style and lifestyle. And some companies in Japan are considering switching to remote work completely. So that will eliminate the needs to be closer to the station or the city. And I believe there will be amount of people moving to the suburbs. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Mark, how about you? Is this a blip or is this going to have long-term impacts?
I think it's going to have long-term impacts. I'll agree wholeheartedly with the other speakers. I think there's going to be what impact will this have on behavior the view of a house as a home or an investment. Again, where do you want to live? You used to be happy to commute, and there was a premium to those locations. If people don't see the need or desire to commute, those values could drop. We know that office and retail is going to have to be repurposed, because I don't think ever again will 5,000 people want to occupy a 40,000 square foot office building altogether. But interest rates are low, demand is still there. We know the inventory is still at an all-time low, so it will change. But I think it will take time. Certainly the researchers over here saying we're not going to get back to pre-COVID virus employment for another 2 years. So the unemployment issue could impact markets and obviously affects affordability and demand.
Great, interesting. I mean, all three scenarios that you laid out are very, very similar to the US. I mean, we see this not kind of dragging out, but kind of having more of a check mark dip, if you will. But still, it is going to have long-term impacts. And Arissa, to your point, and Mark, to your point, how people live and work and interact with each other is going to be a major consideration of how we even look at real estate as a whole. So as far as time goes, I think we're running close to the end here. And I just want to say thank you so much to Arissa, Caroline, and you, Mark, for taking the time today to give us these deep insights into your market. I know for me, this was eye-opening, and I'm hoping for the Ohio Global Business Council and all the attendees that this was helpful as well. So with that, again, thank you. And thank you to the Ohio leadership for inviting us to speak. And I think that's it from our end. And if you want to take it over, Carrie or Gary, again, thank you.
Yes, and I want to say thank you as well. We're really honored to have you here and to hear from you. It's been quite the treat. So thank you for taking time. I know the time difference can be difficult. We really appreciate you being here. I'm going to encourage attendees, if you have a question, to place it in the Q&A box and we will work through that. As people are maybe typing in their questions, I just wanted to share a little insight with our speakers about what has been going on here in Ohio. I know Joe kind of alluded to the fact that we have varying levels of government, and varying voices at those levels about how to respond and what should be happening as we all kind of work our way through this. So Ohio has taken its own unique approach. We've had a governor who's been very engaged in this issue, and very early on issued a shelter-in-place order, which basically means no one is to leave their home except for essential items. Shortly after that, we began shutting down different sectors of the economy to create, less movement. We're actually 2 months in, just now starting to reopen. So this past weekend was the first time in about 2 months that any bars or restaurants have been allowed to service patrons. Same with retail offices. The only retailers that were allowed to be open were grocery stores or stores that sold food. Our hardware or home improvement stores have been able to function, but they too have, been limited in how many guests they can have in the store at one time. We've had companies having to count as people go in, so we've been very proactive in that space. As far as real estate is concerned, in Ohio, real estate was deemed an essential service. So as the governor began to shut down our economy, he had a list of essential services, one of which was real estate. So our members in Ohio have been able to continue to practice, albeit very altered. They've had to have significant safety protocol in place and basically have not been doing open houses or showings, those types of things, but they have been able to practice, which was unique for us. Not all states allowed real estate practitioners in the real estate industry to continue to function. So here we're very similar as well. We have low inventory, demand has seemed to remain steady. Our interest rates too are low. We actually have remote notarization. So that was something that passed through the Ohio legislature several years ago. So we are able to notarize things remotely. I will say that we've not had as many financial institutions adopt that as I think we learned through this crisis would have been helpful. So while, you know, the statute is there for it to be allowed, we've not had as many people take advantage of that in the financial section. And we've also moved into having appraisals, right? We've had a lot of refinances going on and a lot of new loans being generated, and appraisals have been moved to what we've called drive-by appraisals. So you have your appraiser kind of just go and look at the, you know, exterior of the home, not coming into the house, you know, but by and large, we've been able to continue to function. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys, just because we have so many different layers and levels. And we too, I think, are still trying to see what this is going to look like. We don't have, you know, any kind of definitive answer. You know, right now, everything looks actually not that different. You know, we conducted for about 5 weeks economic polls of our membership just to see what activity looked like, and it seemed to be functioning pretty normal. So we do expect there to be an impact. When that comes and what it looks like, we're still waiting to see ourselves. So, okay, I see we have a question here in the Q&A box, so I'm going to read that aloud and then let the panelists or whomever answer. The question is from Rich, and it states, what seems to be the best marketing tools foreign investors access as they shop for investments in the United States? And I'll let people answer. I can read that again if people would like me to. What seems to be the best marketing tools foreign investors access as they shop for investments in the United States? Does anybody want to?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, that's a great question, Rich. This is kind of a shameless plug here, but Realtor.com is something that's actually in, I believe, 60 plus countries right now. So a lot of our practitioners on the ground overseas are looking at Realtor.com as a go-to source. Of course, here in the US, and this is, of course, for residential properties, Realtor.com does have the best absorption of all of the residential listings, meaning that they have relationships with most MLSs across the country. So Realtor.com is a big source, but why don't we kick this over to Mark or Arissa? Do you know what your agents, what they use to look for investments in the US?
They're used, certainly in the UK, they're used to looking at the major property portals, of which are only 3. So I would think that they would want to do exactly the same in the US. Obviously, it's a different legal system. They need to be comfortable with it. We would always, as an organisation, direct them to an NAR member, because we know that you're regulated and you're qualified, because property is not a regulated sector in the UK. So again, we would push people towards somebody or organisations that we had huge confidence in.
Great, thank you. Arissa, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. A question here from Todd is, for UK, Japan, Germany, are you seeing any, how are your local investors looking at investment outside of their country during this crisis? Do any countries look better than others?
I would just say at the moment, investors are sitting on their hands, waiting to see which way the market is going to go. And those international investors will then target those locations, countries where they see the most stability in terms of a market, and will direct their investment there. But at the moment, the easiest decision to make is to make no decision. So again, they're just biding their time.
Well said. Arissa, Carolyn?
Yes, I agree with what Mark said. Many investors are now just sitting, collecting the information and seeing where the world is going. And I know one investor decided not to make the deal at the end of March, who are thinking of purchasing the condo in New Jersey. And also another investor were thinking of were in a deal of commercial real estate, but they decided to request the extension of due diligence. So I think the investors are now kind of sit back and waiting to see what happens next.
So they actually pulled active investment, correct, Arissa?
Sorry?
They canceled an active deal because of this?
Right. Yes, they did.
Interesting. Carolyn, did you have something?
Yes, I think it makes no difference between the countries. Yes, but I think the investors do appreciate real estate as a safe haven much more than before. So after a short period of attending, they will restart investing again. And but which country they prefer, I think there's no difference now in this situation, in this singular situation.
That's a good point. And that's interesting consideration that, you know, returns are no longer the kind of mitigating factor. I mean, you want to look at kind of the health and safety of a country and how they can handle one of these pandemics. Interesting point, Carolyn. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Does anybody have anything that they would like to submit? Last chance. No? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you again. We look forward to staying in touch with you all and potentially seeing how we can work together. Please always see us as a resource if you ever need any information from Ohio. We're happy to talk with you and share what's going on here as well. So, and thank you to Joe and Lisa. You guys have been phenomenal support to us here in Ohio as we work to build our Global Business Alliance. So with that, if anyone else has any final words? No? Okay, everyone, no. This is being recorded and the slides will be available after the presentation. So look for that. And we thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you all so much.
Well, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
be safe, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
bye.